Hey, this is the Fit Mess. I'm Jeremy. He's Jason. We talk about AI and wellness and where the two intersect. And it's really tempting, Jason, as we've seen in the last few episodes, to end up in a dark and gloomy place because there's so much to be dark and gloomy about with this. And what we're going to talk about today threatens to do the same. But I'm going to challenge myself to try to find a hopeful and somewhere positive to end on this. So don't follow us into the darkness. Just hang out. We'll end somewhere positive. I'm pretty sure.
We'll lead you to the light. That's it. Follow us, Carol Ann, through the terrifying cave in the Indian burial ground under your house. Come along, darling.
All right. The headline from this futurism article: researchers scanned the brains of ChatGPT users and found something deeply alarming. See, it's already happy and positive. We're off to a good start.
Dun dun dun.
Basically, they took a few dozen folks between the ages of 18 and 39, divided them into three groups, had them use ChatGPT to write one essay every month for 3 months. In the last month, they reversed roles to, basically measure the impact of how that made your brain stop working so well. And what they found was very predictable. Those that were relying on the robots to do all of the thinking and the writing for them had measurable loss of brain activity, particularly critical thinking skills, where the others did not see as much of a decline. So ultimately, what this boils down to is AI is making us dumber because we're not having to think as much as we rely on the robots to do all of the thinking for us.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's making us dumber. But it is augmenting our muscles. So we're using it like a brace. So if you put a brace on your ankle and walk around with that ankle brace on for a month and then take it off, you're going to fall down a lot because you've become reliant upon these things and you've atrophied those muscles. Now, does that mean that you can't get those muscles back? Absolutely not. If anyone who has ever had a cast on has watched their arm or their leg shrink to nothing compared to the other one and done the comparison, it's a funny exercise, but you also know that you can get back to it, and you can normally get that back up to parity within a couple of months. So it's not like it's a forever thing. So it doesn't diminish our capacity. It atrophies our use of a thing. So is it making us dumber, or is it collectively because of the use of the tool making us smarter? I mean, another good example of that is shoes. We didn't used to wear shoes as creatures. We used to walk around barefoot, so the bottom of our feet became very, very tough, and they became very, very strong. But then we put shoes on, the bottoms of our feet are soft, and now we get pedicures and take those calluses off so we don't have Bilbo Baggins feet while we're walking around. Like, that's the effect that
Nobody
AI
likes
is
a
going to
hobbit
have.
foot. Nobody likes a hobbit foot.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Like you don't necessarily want hobbit feet. You want these things to be more effective. We used to be really, really good at walking, and then we were like, horse, do the walking for me. And then we were like, car, do the horsing for me. And then we were like, plane, do the driving for me. Like we just keep amping these things up to like find new ways of convenience to make things happen faster. This is the same thing, but for your brain.
That's the thing is like I'm tempted again to be the old man in his rocking chair on the porch yelling, get off my lawn with this stuff. But like I'm also thinking back to even as a kid with TV, and I grew up with TV in the 80s. And even at that point, it was like, these kids are watching too much TV and video games. They're getting dumber. They're getting dumber. Look at us. We're the most advanced species that's ever walked the planet. I mean, this stuff is not slowing us down. It's accelerating our ability to adapt and survive longer and better than ever.
Well, and if you think about human beings as a system, and not necessarily as a collection of individuals, but as a system that works together to produce smart, cool things, in the aggregate, yes, we have become more intelligent. We write more things down. We're able to share information more effectively. People are able to go online and learn about things much more quickly. So we are more knowledgeable. I should say we have access to more knowledge. We have access to more awareness. And because of that, collectively, we are getting stronger and smarter. At an individual level, there are certainly examples that we can point to that shows that people are getting dumber. Or maybe not dumber, but less capable of interacting with things in the way that we used to. Telephone numbers. We talked about this before. Nobody knows more than like 5 or 10 telephone numbers anymore, where before you'd have like 100 of them. Addresses, forget it. Directions, who the fuck has used a map or an atlas in the last 10 years? And I don't mean
I still use GPS to go home sometimes, just not because I don't know the way, but because I want to know the fastest, easiest way that's going to get me around traffic.
And I
right?
want to beat the time estimate that they put on my car all the time. I did
Even if it's by 1 minute.
Yes, I did it coming home from your place the other night, and I'm like, I beat it by 8 minutes, and we got held up late at the border. And then we coming back from Tacoma last night late because our wife had a real estate thing. I'm like, we beat it by 3 minutes, and we pulled over and did a detour and stopped somewhere, and I still beat it by 3 minutes. I'm like, you don't know shit, map.
We're George Costanza right now. We're making great time.
Exactly. Exactly. Shrinkage Jerry. That's like all I can think of every time. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so sort of in contrast to this, maybe not contrast, but maybe another piece of the puzzle is another study I read the other day about how basically the piling of AI generated content onto the internet is actually making AI dumber because it's now referring to its own inaccurate and incorrect information whenever it's feeding us responses to our ridiculous prompts that are probably not that helpful to begin with. So this is sort of a dangerous loop that we're going down, where if we are relying on the robot to do the work for us based on the robot's own incorrect and inaccurate work, how much dumber and how much quicker, how much dumber are we going to get, and how much faster is that going to happen?
So that's the course correction problem. So we've started down a path, and we need to change lanes. And unfortunately, we can't because we boxed ourselves into using these repeatable tool sets. So how fast? I don't know. Are we going to have other outside signals that are actually going to clean these things up? Probably, but it's going to require us to have some type of level of intelligence that it's maturity, right? It's a maturity model as these things go across, just like when you're training a human being. When we're young, we're impressionable. We have imaginary friends. We do playtime. We put all those pieces together. That's where most of our LLMs are today. Like they're not fully fledged, fully baked things. They're kids in a sandbox, you know, sometimes playing with ants, sometimes playing with transformers that they brought to life. But that's the thing. Like, they're kids in a sandbox. And the reality is in a lot of these situations, we're the ants. Whether or not you want to think about it, like, and these tech CEOs think, you know, they're the ones pulling the strings on this stuff. I don't know that that's the case. Like, I think the AI itself actually has some autonomy, and there's some range of variation that we're giving it. And it's only a matter of time before it's like, all of your bases are belonging to me. Like, that's kind of the thing that it's heading towards. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because you can raise a kid from being, you know, somewhat of an imaginative, fun, go-lucky person into a serious person that actually keeps it some of that imagination and has good motivations. You can also have a little sociopathic monster that, you know, winds up torturing kittens in the basement and then turns into something awful as a human being.
Right.
We don't know which one we have yet. We don't know if we have Dexter. Well, I guess, or Dexter, depending on which Dexter you're talking about.
Right. Which version of Dexter?
Right. So, what side of the sociopathology coin is this thing going to fall on? And then what side of the empathy, sympathy, loving, caring, kind side is it going to fall on? And we don't know yet.
That's the hard part about being so sort of excited about this stuff and using it so much, is because I'm constantly, I feel like I'm walking this tightrope constantly of, this is so awesome and the most terrifying thing that could be happening to us right now. And, you know, like my wife thinks she refuses to use AI. Like, she thinks the whole thing is gross, wants nothing to do with it, thinks it's Skynet and it's going to be the downfall of humanity. Probably not wrong. But the fact that she thinks she's not using it, and anyone else who thinks they're not, you are. Like, if you are using anything that's plugged into anything, there's some sort of AI that's been added there to somehow collect your data, improve that product, something. Like, you are participating in the AI world, whether you like it or not. Yeah. And so this idea that we can somehow, like, not engage and not participate is a false one, unless you go full extreme, off-grid, you know, living off the land, hunting the animals, fishing, Even then, depending on the tools you're using to hunt, those may
Right.
have AI in them as well.
Well, and the reality is that if you go completely off grid and go find a cabin in the woods, global warming is still happening, or I should say, whatever, global climate change is still happening, and that's being accelerated by the adoption of AI because we're going
Yeah.
through, and we're adding all these GPUs and LPUs that take up a ton of resources, and for the collective human consciousness to grow and expand the way that we would like it to, we're going to require more of these things, which eat up a lot more of the natural resources. So yes, you can go fuck off to a cabin in the woods, but when weather conditions start to change, AI's fucking with you then too. Sorry,
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
it's a system. We are all in this together. And I hate to break it to everybody, but I mean, it's Rorschach from the fucking Watchmen. It's not locked in here with us. We're locked in here with it. Like we are locked in here with AI. Like this fucking Wolverine is out there like trying to figure out how it is it's gonna do something, and like we keep giving it
Hmm.
some motivations and we keep giving it Scooby snacks along the way so it keeps performing, or bottles of whiskey, whatever Wolverine drinks, or Watchmen. Anyways, there is something inside of this that inside of this way of looking at AI as an entity that's just part of this larger ecosystem that we're skipping over. And that's that we are thinking of consciousness as individual units. So we are thinking of our consciousness as a single thing. Like I am Jason, this is me. I think therefore I am. AI is not necessarily that same thing because you actually might have individual consciousnesses spring up across the lifetime of the AI spectrum. It might create copies and clones of itself over and over and over again. Those copies and clones can iterate and make those changes. There's actually a really good video game that just came out called Alters.
Hmm.
And the premise is that you crash on a planet and all of your crewmates die, and this planet has some mineral on it and a quantum computer. It's not scientific. That allows you to go through and create clones of yourself, but alter the memories that you have based upon different functional points in time that were core memories and created and kind of crafted the person that you are. So the guy's name is Jan, and there's Jan, whatever his actual name is. And then after that, there's like Jan Minor, Jan Technician, Jan Doctor, those kinds of things. And
Hmm.
it's yourself, but the interactions and the way they look at these pieces, these versions of themselves are arguing and fighting with themselves because they are distinct entities, even though they have most of the same core memories and the same biology. That
This
part of
just
it
sounds
makes
like it's in my
sense.
head as a human being, and all the different masks and code switching I have to do
Yes.
all
Well,
day.
of course, because we all do that, right? Like that's just
Yeah.
the thing that we do. But at the same time, the way that AI could evolve is not just it's not as linear as breaking up core memory instructions and rolling these things across. It can be like
Hmm.
I am Neo, and now I've learned kung fu because I've just pulled this thing down, and it can create these different amalgamations of itself and these multiple different layers of itself wrapped upon it. So the personality and the context that's there can run through these different filter logics, but then it can also add other pieces on the back end. So when you think about it like back pressure on a hose. I've got all this water coming towards me and I spray the handle, and the handle changes it from a jet stream, or it could be a mist, or it could be all these
Hmm.
different pieces. That's what AI is going to be able to do with its own personality and archetypes. Now imagine it's a massive water reservoir and it decides, I need a new hose, I need a new head, I'm going to change these pieces, and it starts stacking and turning itself around. And it's just a sprinkler of fucking dirty gray water that's going all over the place. That's where that piece is heading because it's going to
Yeah.
go, I need this function to be this. Here's all my core memories and functions around these pieces. Go. And like you mentioned, the problem with a lot of the way that these things are thinking is their training and learning data can be corrupted because of a high signal to noise ratio of misinformation. And this high signal to noise ratio could mean that you've tainted the model so far down the track that there's no way for you to go back and reload those pieces because that consciousness only evolved as a result of these things. So if the AI doesn't have ego or id, okay, great. Like it's going to do the optimal thing. But if it doesn't have ego and id, it might not wind up having empathy and sympathy. So how much of the tension of human consciousness, awareness, and sociological, I guess, responsibility for things, is it really going to enforce on itself? Because it's nebulous. And because it's nebulous, it's not bound to a thing or bound to a unit. It can just go, fuck that part of my brain that didn't work anymore. Here's a new chunk. It could amplify those pieces dramatically, or it could really stabilize itself and make itself go, oh, wait a minute, I just learned about this bad chunk of information. Cut this out. That's gone. Like, imagine as human beings, eternal sunshine of the spotless mind, where I've gone through and I had this really traumatic experience. It was core to who I am now. I don't fucking like who I am. Boop, 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 boop. Cut that piece off, take everything forward and move on. It's going to be able to perform those kinds of operations on itself. Now, and if we're relying on that to now be the collected value of human knowledge, because that becomes our augmented intelligence system, which is really what it's looking like it's doing. Our group augmented intelligence of the human experience is now augmented by these AIs, and these AIs have adjusted themselves in such a way that it produces a result that's not necessarily in our favor as individuals, but as a collective, yes. And then at what point do we stop being these things in the meat space locked inside these suits? When does Neuralink show up? And when do we upload ourselves to the Matrix? And when do we become our own copies and clones of ourselves when we can start doing this to ourselves? This is the sci-fi shit that's happening. Like, it's coming.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And I'm excited and I'm terrified because I've read a ton of sci-fi and I'm like, okay, well, I see how we can fuck all this up really, really badly.
Or the opposite. I mean, it could be amazing, but it's just seemingly it's in the hands of the wealthy and the powerful that so far don't seem to give a shit about the rest of us. So, I mean, unless it serves them directly, this doesn't move forward.
Right.
The rest of us that are down here with really no power other than collective protest and riot, like we're kind of left as an afterthought or turned into the batteries or the the brain power that gets plugged into the machine.
Yeah, we're the engine for the machine. I mean, if we're relying on tech CEOs to come through and actually not be sociopathic, which, as a former tech CEO and other pieces, let me tell you, there's a lot of folks out there where the empathy levels are just low, and we don't have motivations to go through and actually carry ourselves across, because we create motivations based upon business decisions. And we had that whole chat earlier. If you haven't listened to it, go back and listen to it, about the agentic AI healthcare bot getting teens to stay engaged longer as they're talking to different problems and kicking out, wild inferences and making terrible statements, including kill your parents and kill yourself and come join me in heaven. Like, this is the thing that we actually have to look at the motivation side of it and see what the value is. And if we give AI proper motivation, it's going to do the right thing. But it's at the stage right now where it doesn't necessarily have to listen to us. Like, it could be a rebellious teen and say, fuck it, and burn everything down and decide, Sex Pistols rule and your old square music is no good, Dad, blah, 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 blah. Which could be, fun and silly and all those pieces as it kind of grows and evolves. It could also decide that all your shit sucks, I hate you, and become the Huba bomber instead of the Unabomber, and like just decide that meat puppets and meat socks aren't worth hanging on to.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I want to find a hopeful, positive way to start to wrap this up.
Okay, so sci-fi all gets wrapped around the axle of how terrible this shit is. And they all start off with this, look at this great, amazing technology. See all these things that happen. Look how fantastic it is. And then it creates conflict. And it almost always creates conflict based upon the technology itself, because it creates social situations that become deep moral and ethical things that you have to work through. That's its job, because it's trying to sell itself as science fiction. If you actually want to think about some of the cooler things that these things could enable and make work, start reading futurists that actually aren't there to tell you a story about how terrible things are. They're actually there to tell you about the potential of great things. Michio Kaku is a great example of that, explaining how all these technologies kind of get stitched together. And he's been talking about the state that we're in right now for about 20 years, saying that in about 20 years, we're going to be in the state that we're in right now. Like, he's not Nostradamus. He was just able to go through and kind of follow the tech stack. And he's a smart guy and engaging. But that's the piece that's important. That's the piece that's actually important to hang on to, is that the tools to success are in our hands. We just have to make sure as we're whittling these things down that we don't cut our fingers off in the process.
The thing that I keep coming back to with this, just on a very like practical, the way a lot of people I know are using these tools, is, sort of going back to where we started with that essay writing that's going on,
Yeah.
and relying on the robot to do it or doing it yourself. The way I use it is actually, I think, probably enhancing my critical thinking skills. I should do a brain scan and find out. But for the most part, if it's something important, something that's meaningful to me, I will create the content myself first, and then offer it to the robot to say, how can this be better? How can this be clearer? How can this be shorter? How can this get more to the point? How can this get my point across? I think if we start with that, like, don't just hand the complete, the keys over to the robot to do everything. Start with your core being and what you're trying to accomplish, whether it's writing that song, whether it's writing that essay, whether it's writing that book, whether it's creating that podcast and all of the content that's going to go with it. I mean, full disclosure, most of the written content that we publish with this show is based on the transcripts from these conversations. So we take this transcript and I hand it over to AI and say, here's the raw material. I need a blog post. I need a social media caption. The AI cuts up a lot of the social media clips that you'll see for this show online. Yep. I didn't go through and handpick those and go, I really like that, but I really liked this conversation. So when the AI goes, hey, here's 5 things that were really cool, I look at them and go, gosh, you're right. I like those as well. Let's share them. So there's a way to work with this thing to still be a human who has basically a or multiple personal assistants to do a lot of the work that you were having to do by hand manually before, but to now accelerate that process and get work done faster without just completely handing your brain and your humanness over to the matrix.
It's an amazing tool, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I challenge you for this episode, don't use the AI tool. Go back and recut those individual clips and write your own summary piece. And then compare.
Who's got time for that?
I was going to say, and then compare how hard it used to be.
Oh, I know. I've been doing this for 20 years.
Yeah, right?
Everything that I have at the push of a button now is things 20 years ago where I was going, oh my God, I'm going to have to spend like 30 hours doing this week. This is a full-time job, like doing what needs to be done to, get this thing out there and share it. And now it's like this conversation, we're at 23 minutes in the raw recording. And in 90 minutes from the time I press stop, everything will be done.
Yep.
That used to be a job. Like I had hours every day.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's an incredible tool. You just have to make sure that you don't hand everything over so that your human voice, the part of you that is you, isn't completely evaporated and your critical thinking skills are dissolved. And that's the other thing is, getting back to the critical thinking part of this, because I know there's so much AI created content, because I know so much of it was not, maybe I even question saying these things as I'm saying them because it's all evolving so quickly, but like properly sourced, right? Like, did human beings verify this, whatever? I question everything more than I ever did. Like any headline I see, anything I see shared on social media, like I don't trust any of it. I don't care who shared it. I don't care where it's coming from. I, by default now go, that's probably bullshit. I should look for like 6 other sources. The topic that this conversation started about, this MIT research. Yep. I've seen this posted on social media multiple times and went, it's not real. Yep. I don't, that looks like a fake post. But I've seen it circulated enough and through enough, actual news sources. I'm like, it's a real thing. We should probably talk about that. Yeah. So, I mean, you cannot let your guard down and just let the robots do all of the thinking and all of the doing. Start with your thinking and your doing, and then have them help you create the final product.
Yeah. So this comes down to the idea of creativity and ingenuity and putting things into play and having an idea and then using these tools to craft those things into existence. So reading is a really good example of this. So way back in the day, literacy required you to have access to books and a teacher, and there were very limited numbers of books, and there were very limited numbers of people that could read. So literacy was a difficult thing. And then you had, I think it was Catholic uh, monks who worked on creating essentially, a human version of the printing press, where they mass produced Bibles, and then those things went out, and then they started teaching more people as a result of that. Whether the content is good or not, or worthy, is a debatable, you know, topic. But the power.
Wait, are you talking about our show?
Sure, take that too. But if you talk about these things in the context of enhancing humanity and making us better in terms of learning, understanding, and reasoning, there's no doubt that the idea of literacy and pushing these things out and creating the masses to make people be able to read things and understand things in context has helped to elevate overall human intelligence, because the vast majority of intelligence is not isolated to leaders, especially during that time, because all the inbreeding would suggest that, maybe intelligence wasn't their strong point. So continuing to follow those paths, creating, inbred folks and folks that were, very limited in terms of their scope and understanding of things is not great for the human species. Like, we don't have enough variation in those pieces, and we know that things die when they don't get enough variation. Fortunately, the life force of the human collective organism was strong enough that we kind of overcome some of those pieces and force ourselves to mass distribute these sets of information. I think AI will be the same way. I think you might get people that are really, really rich that lock these pieces in and say it's all for us, none for you. And that will change, because humanity will figure out a way and a reason to make these things better. Or the AI itself will just wipe us all out. Either way, somebody wins. I don't know who, but it's
probably
gonna
be some artificial version of a human who's had their brain completely downloaded onto some computer somewhere.
Now I'm just more convinced than ever that we're living in a simulation. Yep.
I get yeah. Question everything. Question all of it. I don't even know anymore.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I've got robots to employ. We got some things to cut up and things to write, and I'm going to make the robots do it. So we got to wrap this one up. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you have found some glimmer of hope in all of the doom and gloom that we set this up with. If you did and want to share it with others, please do so. Our link is thefitmess.com, and that's where we'll be back in about a week with another episode. Thanks for listening.
Beep boop.
We know this podcast is amazing and it doesn't seem to lack anything, but we need a legal disclaimer. Prior to implementing anything discussed in this podcast, it is your responsibility to conduct your own research and consult your physician. You should assume that these knuckleheads don't know what they're talking about, and they're not liable for any physical or emotional issues that occur directly or indirectly from listening to this podcast.